we all set to go?
Sandy's ready there?
Yes, we're ready? Okay, good morning. My name is Olivia Chow.
Just 1 second.
I'm the chair of the executive committee. No, not quite.
Excuse me, everyone. Can we have your attention, please? We're going to start the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, you want me to do that? We are going to start the meeting. Here we go. I'm Olivia Chow, the chair of the executive committee. We have quorum. I'm now calling the meeting number 8 to order, and welcome everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1, and this meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, we would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, the Mississauga of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. If you're registered to speak today, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list, and the list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Executive Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the city clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at where you can find them to help with motions. Are there any declaration of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand, unmute your mic, indicate the item number and the nature of your interest. No interest, okay. Seeing none, we will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from the regular meeting on previous meeting and special meeting on August 24th, 2023. Councillor Deputy Mayor Molly moved. All those in favor, carried. Let's now run through the agenda. And we have 8.2, the variance. Well, in order to get to 8.2, you need to start with 8.1. Pardon me. Larry Grossman, Forest Hill Memorial, no one's holding. Okay. Item 8. You know what? I can't do it that way. Okay, I was going to see if anyone's holding anything and then move the entire item. Okay, we'll do it one by one rather than being so ambitious. I'm trying to finish a meeting early so you can see the Jays game at 4:30, isn't it? Right? Yeah, okay. I know. Okay, no one's holding 8.1. All those in favor, opposed, carry.
Do it.
8.2. Capital Variance Report for the 6 month ending June 30th. Surely someone.
No one has a speaker.
Yeah, it's going to, Councillor Carroll is going to hold it. Oh, we have a speaker. All right. Item 3, Operating Variance Report. Deputy Mayor McAlfee holding it. Thank you. Item 4, defer 8.4, defer revenue report at June 30th. You want to?
I'd like to hold that one.
Yep, thank you. But your chief is holding that. Item 8.5, Toronto Reserve and Reserve Funds balance as of June 30th. Do note that we are, I won't make any comment, but anyway, anyone holding it? If not, I'll save my comment for the other item. All those in favor is being moved by Councillor Carroll, opposed, carry. 8.6, small business property tax subclass review.
I'd like to hold that one as well.
Being held. 8.7, vacant home tax status update. There is a speaker on it, I believe. We will hold it down for a speaker. 8.8, ConnectTO program update, city assets for efficiency and connectivity, and we have a speaker also. We're holding that. Wheel-Trans service model update, accessibility feedback, also have a speaker. The FCM board meeting on September 5th. Councillor Ainsley is so diligent. Look at this report. Thank you for telling us what's happening with FCM and calling for a new municipal growth framework. You set the stage. When I went up to Ottawa, I was trying to follow your footsteps. Anyone holding it? Did you want to speak to it? You're moving it. All right. All those in favor? Oppose, carry. Thank you for doing that hard work, Councillor. Now let's come back to item 2. We have a speaker, Damien Mole. Mole? Mole, okay. Thank you, Damien. You have 5 minutes.
A set of slides to go with this. I don't know where that actually shows up.
Is it a PowerPoint or slides? It's a PowerPoint?
There we go.
Oh, here we go. Got it.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Damien Mole. I'm going to use. Is the mic on? Yes. Sure. I'm going to use this item just to talk about some interesting features of the capital budget and propose a suggestion that I think will help with the pressure on the operating budget, since I know that's something this committee has been looking into very, very hard. So the first thing I want to point out, and apologies here, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about things that people probably already know and giving a summary, but I promise I will get to a point. We're just going to have to set the table a little bit. So as the report points out, we are going to have a capital budget underspend this year. We're currently projecting 81.3% spent, but we do this every year. The capital budget has been underspent for as long as I could find. Since 2006, we've spent an average of about 65% of the capital budget. Last year, we spent about $2 billion less than we estimated. And with apologies to the staff who estimated 81%, I would guess we're going to end up somewhere between 60 and 70% again this year, which would be about another $1 billion underspent from what we already project.
Damien, I'm having trouble speaking. Can you move your mic closer? Yeah, perfect. I can hear you better.
Thank you, Mayor. So where does the unspent money go? I'm avoiding some nuance here, so apologies to staff, but approximately when a project doesn't get spent, the money stays with the project in a reserve that's allocated to that project. So for instance, last year in 2022, we underspent the capital budget by $2 billion and the reserves increased by $2 billion. And I want to point out this happens under every mayor. This isn't a partisan thing. It happened under Mayor Tory, it happened under Mayor Ford, it happened under Mayor Miller, and then earlier than that, I couldn't find anything, but I'm going to assume it happened under Mel Lastman as well. So if you look at this on a project-by-project level, this kind of makes perfect sense. You want the money to stay with the project. That's convenient. You don't want to constantly be reshuffling money every year, or you don't want a project to be accidentally unfunded. And this is also pretty cautious. Like, we make sure we have the money in place well in advance, and that's good. But if you take a step back, this leads to some strangeness. So, for example, in 2022, we underspent the budget by $2 billion, and the reserves increased by $2 billion, but we transferred $1.3 billion to the reserves. So if we hadn't have done any of that, the reserves still would have gone up by $700 million. Also, if you look at the capital from current, we spent $340 million on the capital budget, but we didn't need to do that because we underspent by $2 billion. Similarly, we issued $1.2 billion of debt, but we could have issued none of that debt and still been perfectly fine and funded in capital budget for 2022. So, you know, if you look at it a project by project basis, it works out just fine. But if you step back, you notice that the caution we apply when we look at it project by project is a little strange. And that caution is not free, it comes with a cost. Another way of saying this is we are paying a little bit of interest and paying an opportunity cost of several $100 million to have that money up front to fund projects well in advance. Now, I think given the pressure on the operating budget and through rising interest rates, there might be an opportunity here to dial back that level of caution and free up some money. So this brings me to a suggestion. I would propose that for budget 2024, what you do is budget less capital from current and less debt. I'm not saying no, I'm saying dial back the level of caution a little bit and transfer less money from the operating budget to the reserves. I know there will be some projects that are already scheduled to be funded with capital from current or from debt for 2024 and 2025. But for those projects, what I would say is you can use the tax rate stabilization fund, which has close to $1.5 billion in it, to fund those projects on a short-term basis, and then over the long term, budget less to come from capital from current and from debt. And one thing I want to point out is I anticipate some people won't like that proposal, and I want to say it will be fine. We have a significant amount of money in the reserves, so doing this would result in us estimating that we will drain the reserves, but the status quo is that we estimate that the reserves stay flat and we add $2 billion to them every year. And we have about 3 full years of capital spending backlogs in the reserves right now. So we have a lot of wiggle room to work with here. And some people might say that this is not a realistic way to raise $50 billion over 10 years. And I would just say, remind everyone, we don't actually need $50 billion over 10 years. We only spend 2/3 of that money. So we only need $33 billion. So I recognize that it's not a realistic way to raise $50 billion, but it is probably a realistic way to raise $33 billion. Thank you.
Damien, that was a very thoughtful, thorough presentation. Thank you for taking the time. Councillor Carroll, does anyone have a question to the speaker?
Not of the deputy, no,
Do
we'll
you
ask
want?
questions of staff.
Thank you very, very much.
And apologies, I didn't bring this up to anyone's staff to give them some time to think about it. I saw that this was going to be on the agenda last week, so.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, would you like a comment from our staff team?
Well, I see, I don't know if Deputy Mayor.
Oh,
McCarthy
Deputy,
wants to ask-
yep.
Oh, okay,
Deputy
your
Mayor
questions, staff as well.
McAuliffe has
Yeah.
held the item, pardon me.
Yeah.
Go for it, yeah, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we did start the process of recasting against actuals. So are we still doing that in the development of the budget?
Through the mayor, yes, we've begun, really, it started a few years back where we are looking, and as we start the budget process, 2 key considerations that we make with every capital project is first and foremost capacity to spend. So is there a demonstrated history on the ability to spend on that type of work to the amount that's being budgeted? And the second one, which is as important, is readiness to proceed of a project. So where is a project in terms of its design phase, public consultation phase, ensuring that the funds that we put in each of the budget years are likely to be spent in that year. We had seen some considerable improvement in our spend rates, which have taken a downturn at the start of the pandemic and some of the challenges that we're seeing with labor shortages, supply chain issues. But we are starting to move forward on further actions to try to adjust and correct for that.
Okay, and do we have an issue because we approve our budget much later than many other surrounding municipalities? So our tenders aren't going out until after budget. So are we being outcompeted for labor? Like other projects seem to start in other municipalities sooner than ours. And there's some major road infrastructure projects that I saw didn't even get started until, July, August this year. So is there a problem with our tendering process that could help us to get started on these major projects earlier in the year and then come in on a higher capacity to spend?
Through the mayor, that could happen in some instances, but there are approaches to how we budget, which aim to try to counter against that. So what we will do is we approve both the 10-year capital budget and plan. We approve a single budget year, but we also allow for approval of multi-year commitments. And what that does is it allows staff to start tendering out work that will actually happen in the following years. You see this being done to great success in our Toronto Water Division, our Transportation Division, and you see that the spend rates have significantly improved as we've leveraged that. We are continuing to work with all of our city programs and ensuring that we're applying that same approach and methodology to enable us to get that authority to move on projects in advance of the year. I will say there had been challenges in the last couple of years as there was uncertainty on COVID support funding, where we had to scale back the amount of capital work we were able to bring forward. So it might have caused some challenges on that front over the last few years.
Okay, when you look at the breakdown on the spends, there's a few divisions that are significantly lower than the others. So I'm just wondering, can Tess speak to, they're at 60% and 311's at 53%. So what are the main drivers on the underspends on those divisions? And I can ask at council if they're not here.
Through the mayor, we have some information in the variance report. Let me dig it up and I'll respond shortly.
Okay, and then this question around capital for current, I did have the same question and the deputant raised it as well. Are we over budgeting what we'll be drawing down from capital from current in any given year?
Through the mayor, the way that we budget our capital program, so the expenditures are incurred, the funding sources are actually, so we wouldn't issue debt, not in the case of capital from current, but we wouldn't issue debt until the project actually incurred expenses. So we're not upfront. We don't budget for the work upfront or finance the work upfront. It's after the expenditures are incurred. In the case from capital from current, we'll do a review first at the start of the year in terms of which projects qualify for capital from current funding, but then second, at the end of the year, we will look and see where there's an adjustments to ensure that the capital from current funding is applied as one of the primary funding sources, allowing us to apply debt later on and essentially not issue the debt unless we're absolutely required to based on our spend rates, and we model our capital plan accordingly.
And do you have a target for what you want your percentage spend to be?
Preferably 100%. I do think we're trying to improve our spend rates. We want to see some incremental gains. I would like us to see that we're above 80% across the board within a few years if we can continue to address some of these challenges. I think part of that is also ensuring that there's some flexibility for projects to accelerate funds, provided that they're moving faster than they had originally anticipated. At times, there may be an inclination to budget funds in that current budget year based on what the top value of spend you might incur, knowing we could carry forward funds to the following year if you don't achieve it. If you provide that flexibility to accelerate funds, you can essentially continue to program your work, budget based on that midpoint of where you think you will spend, but have a flexibility of accelerating funds provided they're available and the funding sources are available to accelerate.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, through the mayor, we have Mr. York here to speak to the 311 spend rate.
Thank you very much, and a great question. So in regards to the previous year, the 301 spend rate was 86%. When we evolved into the CXD division, we also got capital dollars from another program. What we want to do is do a phased approach. So all the projects and missions that we determined for 2023, there'll be a completion rate of 86% for this year, carried forward for the second phase of planning into 2024. So we're on plan, but we also want to accelerate some things. So we want to make sure we have capital monies to do some effective work in 2023 and 2024. And we're currently on plan, on budget, on pace to do so. Thank you.
Test, do we know what test is at 60?
We're just following up on that now.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
get back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we can, to address some of the deputants' concerns and indeed councillors, I think we sometimes run into this because we don't borrow until we absolutely need to, till we know we're executing the work. Sometimes in the second quarter, what looks like debt issued for this year includes a significant carry forward that we have not incurred debt for until we executed. Is that the picture this year?
Through the mayor, yes. The debt that we will actually issue in any given year is for the work that would have been completed prior to the year or even earlier in the year, and that would also include carry forward. I think as you look at our capital plan, even at the spend rates where they are, those funds are not necessarily returned to source or held. Those funds are maintained to be able to complete that capital work in the following year. And what you'll see is in most instances, while that work may not, or that cash flow may not have been completed by December 31st, you would see those expenditures to be completed earlier or midpoint of the following year.
Right. And to some of the other concerns raised there, there are a number of constraints as to why we don't use the methodology proposed there. As I understand them, not the least of which is legislative constraints over some of the reserves, but also what we are following is the methodology that is generally accepted by PSAB, is it not?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct, in terms of what projects and when we would capitalize them and then issue the debt accordingly.
And holding legislative reserves, not using them up front, leaving them there is often for legislative reasons, for committed reasons, program by program by program. We leave committed reserves where they are so that we don't find ourselves out over our skis.
Yeah, through the mayor. So, and yeah, as you would see in the reserve report and the deferred revenue report, we have obligations against those reserve values. We also have commitments, council-approved commitments. As we're budgeting our 10-year capital plan, we will look at the reserve value that we have. We will also build a continuity schedule based on the revenues that we can anticipate will be available over the 10 years, and then apply all of the commitments against those reserves and ensure that we're staying within a positive balance.
Thanks. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions? If not, this one was held by Councillor Carroll. Did you want to move?
Number two,
these?
I think it was just held for the speaker, but I'm happy to move it. Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to speak to it.
Oh,
To Councillor Cole?
Yes, I want to thank the deputant for
Deputy Mayor.
a very insightful presentation. Thank you for taking time, because I think it's a very important issue, given there's so much discussion about Toronto's finances right now. So I hope that staff will respond to the deputant's deputation, even speak to him or give him something to just respond to some of the good points that he raised. I think that would be very appropriate. The other thing it brings up is this incredibly complex terminology that's used around budgets, and the lack of time that our taxpayers have to understand all this budget terminology. I mean, we just heard, I don't know how many acronyms and how many terms and capital current. I mean, the average taxpayer has really no time to basically understand the state of Toronto's financial affairs, never mind the complex challenges we have in terms of, for instance, our spend rate isn't good enough. I mean, how do you explain that to your citizens? Well, we're not spending fast enough. So I think what we need to look at, maybe not now, but over the next month or so, is a way of having a basic primer of some of the essential explanations of terminology around our budget terminology and our budget pressures that we as councillors can disseminate in our newsletters, in our public meetings. And I think that would be very helpful, especially given the situation we're in right now. We have the mayor heroically going to Ottawa, up the street, trying to basically deal with our financial realities. So we need to basically have this type of simple, basic Canadian Tire Economics 101 communication plan. And it doesn't have to be pages. I just want 1 page, 2 pages. So I can basically better understand all this complexity and share it with my residents. So I think that this is one thing we have to do. And I was just talking to Jamie from City TV as I was coming in. I don't know if Jamie's here. Where's Jamie? And talking about the mayor going to Ottawa, and the media usually reports, well, Toronto's asking Ottawa for money. Well, it's our damn money. It's Toronto taxpayers' money. We're just saying, please let us keep a few dollars here so we can take care of our homeless, our refugees, our TTC. It's Toronto's money. And we'd love to support all these programs from coast to coast, and they're needed, et cetera. But we're just asking for some of that money to be kept here so that we can help provide the services people of Toronto and build the infrastructure we need. So we're not asking for their money. It's our damn money. Anyways, that's all. Thank you.
Well said. Our damn money, okay. Report recommendation in front of us. All those in favor, opposed, carry, thank you. Operating variance report. Any speaker? Councillor McAlfee.
Just quick questions for the CFO around, I guess, the Coles Notes. Oh, there's a good one. The Coles Notes version. Yeah.
The Coles Notes are, it's our damn money.
Yeah. I think I have a new favorite thing at City Hall. Okay. What is our current projected shortfall right now for the year?
Through the mayor, our current projected shortfall to year end is just under 817 million.
Okay.
It is made up of 3 components. The first component is our COVID funding shortfall, which is about 841 million. The second component is the net shortfall within shelter and support services, which is over 30 million. And then the last is actually a surplus in all of our other programs and areas, where it's a surplus of about 55 million. When you combine those 3 together, that's where we come to our 817 million year-end projected shortfall.
Okay, and the backstop for COVID, the last time I think I pulled a number, it was 1.03-ish. Is that still where we're at on that one?
We were able, so as part of the year-end report, we were able to move a little more funds into the COVID backstop. So the backstop round numbers is about $1.1 billion. And again, at year-end, with our projections, we would need to deplete over 840 million from the backstop, which would leave inadequate amount of funds available to deal with the expected ongoing COVID pressures into 2024, or the sustained impacts, especially those on transit and shelter.
Now, you have an underspend on capital, and some of that is capital from current. So will that capital from current also offset some of that 816 million shortfall?
No, so the capital is distinct and separate from the operating budget. When we complete the year on capital, we would do a comprehensive review around what the project spend was, but then also the expected carry forwards into the following year. So if we would need to retain those funds to complete that work into 2024, we would carry forward those funds. We do have an exercise of closing out projects, but they generally yield much smaller dollars, and you might have funds retained in some of the smaller reserves that are supported by those projects.
Okay, and then the last cool note that I think would be useful for us is what are our allocated reserves and what are they against? And this is the ones that were legislatively required or been collecting over time for dedicated projects. So what's the Cole's notes on that?
And I believe we have the two reports on our reserves. Between our deferred revenues and our reserves, collectively, we have around $11 billion. At the same time, we have about $38 billion in commitments and obligations over the next 10 years against those reserves. I think a key example, and one that, to speak to the Coles Notes approach, would be Toronto Water, where in Toronto Water, our reserve balance is roughly $1.2 billion, I believe, and that's based on the water revenue that's generated on an annual basis and contributed to that reserve. That reserve then has to support both the operations of our water services as well as our $14 billion capital program.
So 11 billion against 38 billion in liabilities.
And obligations and council-approved commitments.
Okay, thank you.
I think you covered 3 reports in one shot. Do I see any other people that want to question? No? Councillor McCarthy, did you want to speak on this? Okay, so just to, we are 800 million short, and we have in our reserve to deal with the shortfall about 1.1. We're emptying out the reserve in order to fill the budget hole, which will cause us a big problem next year, coming 24. So that was my Coast version of what's just been asked. All those in favor of recommendations in front of us? Thank you. Next item, small business. The reserve fund was approved. 6 is small business property tax subclass review.
I think I have one for deferred items first, item number 4.
I have 4. Oh, right, I'm sorry. Revenue report. Item 4.
Yes, if there are no other questions, I just have a quick motion to move.
Go for it.
Okay. If folks want to, there we go. It's up on the screen that executive may direct the interim chief financial officer and treasurer to report directly to council, detailing the expected loss in growth-related capital revenue over the 10-year capital planning period, resulting from development-related funding charges imposed by Bill 23 and the associated cost of social and hard infrastructure such as water and sewer service, et cetera. I think I can consider the rest of it read. This is simply in conversation with the CFO and with our chair, the mayor. We just need to tease a little more out of this to help us with our intergovernmental case, and the detailed breakdown isn't in there. And I think while this report is going by is the best time to grab that information. So we'll get that in a one-sheeter, hopefully in Canadian Tire language, in time for council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Reason why it's very important, because we're in the middle of conversation with the provincial government. There was a promise to make us whole because of Bill 23. But that bill, the numbers, because we are growing, we're also building housing, and we need to know the total dollar amount, which also includes your Section 37 and all those DCs that you get for social and hard infrastructure. So all those in favor of that recommendations, And the main motion as amended,
Just on the motion. Just on the
she has an amendment.
Yeah, there's a tricky bit of procedure here. Yeah. Yeah, technically, we'll have to vote on this at council because it's receipt forward to council, and then we'll vote on this motion there, yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. so
Councillor
technically,
Carroll's
we're
motion.
voting on the receipt and then.
That's right, you can't
yeah,
receive it
adopt this
if
in
you
council.
have a report coming up.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed, carry? I didn't see it was received for information. Okay. Which means it'll come to council. And I am now at the next item is small business subclass. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, I just have a quick motion if there are no questions here.
I have a question. Whose money is it? Yeah. We should use that.
I think you're gonna like my motion.
In terms of, here we're dealing with small business property tax subclass review, I just wanted to, something that relates to this is that the previous Minister of Finance in Ontario, Rod Phillips, was working with our officials in terms of getting rid of the impact treatment of Main Street properties based on highest and best use, which means that if you've got a corner grocery store or convenience store in Toronto, those don't get taxed as convenience stores. They get taxed, well, they could be a condo. And, there was a famous case of the bistro down in Wellington that had the video and everything where they said, and it worked, and the minister at the time said he was going to get rid of that. It was unfair to small business to be taxed like condos when they're actually mom and pop stores just selling convenience. So I'm just wondering, has there been any further discussions with the current provincial minister of finance about getting rid of that punitive tax on small business that affects their value, which then affects the tax rate and then the taxes they pay? Any follow-up to what Minister Phillips had promised to do?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Because
My name is Casey Brendan. I'm the Director of Revenue Services Division. Councillor Cole, to answer your question, to my knowledge, MPAC still uses highest and best use as a valuation principle because highest and best use reflects the price a property would trade for in the open market. So to that extent, highest and best use continues to factor into the assessment of properties by MPAC. The current Minister of Finance has announced that they will be reviewing the assessment function. And so part of that review may take into account an examination of how properties are valued. But nobody has made a commitment to do away with highest and best use. It's still a valid principle in terms of assessment.
So therefore, it wouldn't be a bad idea for this council to formally request from the Minister of Finance of the provincial government that when they do the review of MPAC on the basis of fairness, that they include an examination of the use of the current best use and replace it with current and actual use. So it wouldn't hurt to put in a request. Right. Thank you very much.
you have a puzzled look in your face. Who wants to ask a question? Councillor Carroll, no question? No? No, the puzzled look remains puzzled. Okay, all right, never mind. Okay, okay. Any motions on this? No? Yeah, Councillor Carroll?
Yes, I have a motion, and if you read the report, it pertains to something already covered in the report. There is a section in the report that speaks to strip malls, and it ends with staff saying, we can't figure this out, we're going to keep thinking about it. And, I simply want to attach a sense of urgency to looking at that. There is a review of CVA going on right now. Municipalities across Ontario, ours included, asked that there be an assessment done in the meantime. Because the review should be thorough, it should have good recommendations, and so could take 2 or 3 years. And so we asked for an assessment to be done in 2024. The answer was no. And in the meantime, there's another group that's suffering here and really receiving no benefits of any kind. No ConnectTO, no nothing. And certainly no participation in the small business subclass. And that is small businesses, mom and pops inside strip malls and suburbs. If you look at our list of where people are able to take advantage of the subclass, you'll see that the lowest are places like Etobicoke Centre, Scarborough Centre, and selfishly, Don Valley North. And the reason is their evolution of development happened at the height of the strip mall. So there are no avenues, but they are a hotbed of small, newcomer-owned and led types of businesses, the very type of people we hope to be the benefactors. And making matters worse, these have become very attractive development sites. As some of the smaller strip malls that don't have an anchor grocery store become more attractive for development for housing, their value has gone up, particularly in the last assessment. So they're sitting in high value places, and yet they are the very type of small business we're trying to help. The tricky part is they are tenants. The tax is paid by the owner of those strip malls. And so I'm simply asking that staff try to figure out a way to transparently give some tax related benefit to the small businesses that are just like the ones on your avenues, just like the ones running out Little Jamaica, running out along avenues up and down the north-south avenues, just like them, and yet have no ability to take advantage of this. And while staff said we'll keep looking, I'm asking them to report back within a time frame so that we hopefully can come up with a solution for these people. Because in terms of a reassessment or that type of adjustment, it's years away. And so they sit not taking part in a lot of our economic development strategies like winter and summer licious for the food-related businesses and ConnectTO, not taking part in the subclass, really needing some type of the type of economic development support we give to BIAs that are on classic main streets. So I'm hoping my colleagues will support this and look forward to the report back, as I will be looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, good work, Councillor Fletcher first, and then Deputy Mayor Cole.
Thank you. I just want to say to you, Councillor Carroll, that's really great that we're including all small businesses. I think we all realize this whole piece was driven by Tabia. That's where it all came from, which is the BIA coalition. And most of these small strip malls in the suburbs aren't part of that. They're not in a BIA. So they got left out. And now you've got the net, you're catching them with that, which I think is very good. And because all small businesses deserve that. I will also say that many of the small businesses in the BIAs don't own their buildings either. So the rent or the tax relief has to get passed on to the tenant. And that's something that I'm not sure happens. It's not our job to watch that, but I don't know if the Tabia watches that. But I think that is an issue, because if we're doing this, we want to make sure that that benefit gets passed on to the people that we're actually setting out the benefit for, not the property owner, but the business owner. And lastly, I do think we also made some strides with ConnectTO. It's not the ConnectTO program, but when we first initiated it, I think you'll remember, probably Jennifer, Councillor McKelvey will, because I think you moved one of those motions, that the strip malls, even though they're private property, that we give the authority to have your little patio in there. Because up to the last time, that actually was illegal, to have chairs and tables and everything like that out on that private property. So it's not on the public right-of-way, so we're not going to hear about ConnectTO there, but encouraging to do things in the mall, do things on your property, have people outside in the good weather. We are encouraging that, and I think we can probably go further. But looking after all small businesses in the city of Toronto is our job, and thank you for raising this up, Councillor Carroll. It's great.
Deputy Mayor Cole?
Yeah, I maybe if I can hold this down, because I'd like to just have a motion whereby I want to get staff to make that request in our discussions with the Ministry of Finance when they look at reviewing MPAC and its methodology about ensuring they look at the current and best use model that MPAC uses. And the reason why I'd like to do that is because this was discussed for a couple of years. We had ongoing discussions with Tabia and independent businesses in my ward where we approached the Minister of Finance. They had meetings here in the community where we said, this is a punitive taxation system that hurts Toronto. And the reason why it hurts Toronto is because we have such development pressures on our main streets. They don't have this in Pickle Lake, and they don't have this up in Timmins, but they have this unfair assessment system that hurts our small businesses here in Toronto, especially on the main streets, because when they are taxed as a commercial property, they're not taxed on what they actually do on that commercial property. They're taxed on, hey, this could be, like I have one small commercial, I think it's a Thai restaurant on Yonge and Eglinton. It's a 40-foot lot. They are proposing to build 50 stories on the 40-foot lot there.
Wow.
So that Thai restaurant in Yonge and Eglinton is taxed as if they're going to be a 50-story tower. So therefore, Toronto small business people are being punished by this antiquated system of highest and best use, which basically relates to speculative value, not real value. So that's why I think it's critically important. If we're going to be fair and help out our small business, we cannot allow this to continue, especially when a lot of the taxes paid by small business in Toronto also go to pay for education and other things. So we have to basically get them back to the table, because they did their analysis of this at that time, and they said, you're right, this is punitive. Had a conversation with Rod Phillips. He said, you're right, this is crazy, because Rod had been at the city, understood how the city was working with this. So they agreed to do something, but then he was replaced by someone else that has no interest in it. Because I don't know where the Minister of Finance or who it is nowadays, where he's from, but anyways, so we have got to get this back on the table to help us small business in Toronto. And so I'm just, if they could write up a motion asking that in future discussions with the provincial government, Minister of Finance and MPAC, that they include an examination of this highest and best use approach by MPAC and replace it with a taxation system based on current and actual use. So that's what my motion would read, but maybe we have to hold this down till I can write this out, or you can write it out for me.
Why don't I hold it down briefly? I wrote some of the words, I think. Current and best Best, better use rather than, yeah.
No, I thought I was
Go on to
speaking.
it.
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was speaking.
we'll come back to this.
spoke.
I'll.
No, I didn't speak to this.
Yeah. So I will hold this down. And, and the motion is being crafted and being checked with the staff. I will come back to this shortly. Why don't we talk about vacant home tax? I believe there is a speaker. No, are there any public speaker?
Seven, yes.
On item 8.7. We have quite a few. Ali Minari, you're on video. Can we put Mr. Minali, Miss Minali? Are you there? Should be on. I'm not seeing the person. Can you open up your mic? Here you are. Okay, turn on your mic so we could hear you. No, we cannot hear you. Maybe you can unmute yourself, sir? Try again. Still cannot hear you. There is this red button on the lower left-hand corner. There's a lower button on the left-hand corner. Mic, unmute. Okay, try again. Nope, try. No, cannot hear you. Keep talking. Nope. I'm going to listen to the next speaker while you work out the technical logistic. If someone can give him a hand. It's working now? No, okay. Suzette Mufuna, are you physically here? Suzette? Yes, come on up. Right in front of that, any chair, yeah? There's a button in front of you, on, off. Press it and we are ready for you for 5 minutes.
Press.
Yep, press on, perfect. Okay.
Okay, my name is.
If you want to have a seat, it might be easier because it's closer to the mic so we can hear you better. If you can lower the mic a bit. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Yeah, come closer. Yeah, move the mic, perfect. Okay, go for it.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Suzette Lucille Mafuna. I've been living in an apartment, a senior's apartment, since 2007. Throughout, I have faced 2 evictions. Not because of something I did, but because there was lack of communication from Toronto Community Housing. Things were never explained to me when I arrived. The other reason I've faced these problems, these evictions, is because I've had to deal with intersecting factors of oppression because of my age, my race, my nationality, my socio-economic status, and age, of course. So I just, I'm here to plead for tenants on behalf of tenants of Toronto, particularly seniors who are not represented, not well represented, and the problems we face are unusual and therefore never attended to. So, as an ACON member, now let me first maybe explain ACON. It's a collective action community group and tenant union We are happy to see the vacant unit tax being increased to 3%. This is a good step. It's not ideal, but it does help deal with the housing problems in Toronto. For ACON members and renters, it's important that this money is used for housing, this 3%. For seniors, it is especially difficult to rent. As I say, I've faced 2 evictions, and there's been nobody who's been willing to intervene on my behalf. I'm sitting with a debt of $12,000, not because I owed rent, but because when I transferred from ODSP to Old Age Security, nobody told me one has to go. So I'm receiving 2 incomes. It takes about 6 months for somebody to realize that I'm earning double. It's now my baggage. I'm carrying this baggage of 12,000, which is why I keep facing the tenant board and facing an eviction. I've got to find somebody to represent me legally because I can't do it on my own. So this thing is hanging on my head. I have a mental disability. Now can you imagine that I've had to abandon my studies because I cannot cope mentally with this issue of a huge debt, plus my studies and everything else that happens in between COVID and stuff like that. So these are serious problems. I'm not the only one. Maybe I'm the only one who's able to express myself, explain what's going on, because we have language issues as well as immigrant people. It's not easy to understand the regulations and policies and stuff like that. That is why I need an ACON in my life. And I think every tenant needs an ACON, an ACON membership where you are represented by a reputable body. Landlords will continue to have high turnover rates and hold out on units to maximize their profits. With a stronger landlord licensing program, landlords would not be cutting corners on their property standards in the first place. In ACON's 2023 State of Repair report, 35 renters said they feel intimidated to report a repair in their building. It is hostile for tenants to try and get their basic human rights for safe and healthy housing. We would like to see the revenue from this new tax used to improve rent safe, fund more bylaw officers, and turn it into a landlord licensing. When it comes to seniors' rights, I also discovered that as a senior, I'm not, I have to discard furniture because of infestation.
Suzanne, may I trouble you to wrap up? I think your 5 minutes is over.
Okay.
But you said what you need to say.
Okay, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions to Suzette? No? No, anyone? No. Thank you for coming and telling us how hard it is. I hope you get ODSP to back off and get the GIS and just get your problem solved. Okay. Is Sheila Farr here? Sheila? No. And Alejandra Vargas? No? It's on video?
No, Sheila Farr's here.
Sheila Fa is here. Sheila?
No, she's not here.
She's not here. Okay, Alejandra is not here either. Ali is on the phone.
Actually, I think, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
You
thank
can
you.
start in 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me in. The previous speaker talked about some of the actually, proposals of ACORN. I want to continue this with something more. ACORN's 2023 state and report finds that how property standards are being violated and how the city fails to moderate the repairs effectively. Here are some highlights. Over 40% of the renters deal with these issues. Too cold in winter, peeling paint on walls or ceilings, holes and cracks in walls or ceilings, ventilation problems in bathroom or kitchen, too hot in summer, cockroaches, mice, and a lot of bed bugs, drafty windows, and security issues. Landlords and property managers see real estate as a business, and they gain to delay and ignore these repairs. Of course, many of them, not all. And they pressure tenants to leave by neglecting unlivable living conditions. And they renovate the unit and rent it for double. This is happening in many of buildings. We need to disincentive landlords from having high turnover rates and a lot of other problems. Housing is a human right, and we need the city to fund and prioritize their property standards, enforcement, and rent safety program seriously. In our state of repair report, ACORN, 60% of the renters had issues getting repairs done. 34% said they don't think there is a point in calling 311. 53% said conditions did not improve after a rent sale audit. So I think these are the problems. And according to the previous speaker, there should be increase in tax for the vacant places, as suggested by the city, for 3%. But this should be used for neat, affordable housing and help the co-ops, corps, who are ready to buy the risk buildings and a lot of other things. This increasing budget and tax can be used to have a better affordable housing situation in Toronto. This is all the suggestions that ACORN is trying to put forward to the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions to the deputy? If not, Miguel Aviva Veladis. Are you here? Here is Miguel. You have 5 minutes. There's a mic in front of you. Press that red button.
Is the overhead working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, no, the overhead.
Machine. All right, that is my deputation, very short.
Only to the point. Sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
So I'm going straight to the point. The vacant homes taxation. We need to somehow help those landlords that are struggling to rent units at $3,000 a piece. Really, they're having a hard time. I don't know where they're gonna have renters like in ODSP or Untitled Works or in pension. So that problem was created by our friend Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau in Ottawa. So I guess increasing the taxes on the empty homes will hopefully put pressure on those landlords to decrease the cost. See, if we can do that, manage to lower it down, it will help them in the long way to avoid paying taxes. So it's a win-win situation, in my opinion. I'm here representing the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, which I'm a proud member. Mayor Chow, I want to extend to you an olive branch. I want to extend a warm approach to your administration. We want to work with you. We want the grassroots groups to work with you. We know that you're doing your best in Ottawa, in Queen's Park, in dealing with Doug Ford, in dealing with Justin Trudeau. Yesterday, we have a protest, a rally, and sadly, there was no city council member to receive a letter from the members. Councilor Paula Fletcher, who's behind me, or she was here a while ago, she was out there. I know I want to apologize for the other's absence, but it was important to support all these seniors, like from Acorn, who are struggling. Being demovicted from your unit that you have paid low rates for your rental. It's going to be impossible under $3,000 a piece, the current cost. And we know the lines for affordable house, for RGI units, is incredible long, and we need to reduce it. I have asked you to meet face-to-face because we have an opportunity to increase the number of RGI units in Regent Park. Councilor Chris Moy says that $8,000 is a lot of money for subsidizing a unit for RGI. We believe it can be done. It is possible. So in your discussions with Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau, please remind them, that our children are leaving Regent Park because they can't afford it. And many, units are overhoused. And that situation leads to troubles in the family. I'm tired of seeing the cops outside my building because there are 3 or 4 people living in one bedroom unit. It's ridiculous, crazy. And the cost of sharing a space with 3, 4 guys, paying $1,000 each a pop, or less, for sharing, rooming houses that are unsanctioned, et cetera, et cetera. So, Olivia, I remind you again, the community wants to speak to you about 230 Sherbourne Street. I know you look good in this picture, by the way. You were younger. So we want to work with you, really, honestly. We want to have a face-to-face meeting. Yesterday, my wonderful MP, Kristen Wonton, reminds me all that housing is a human right. If we can get this thing nailed down at Queen's Park and at Parliament Hill, that they understand how important it is to bring down those costs of rental, so seniors, like people who belong to Acorn, don't have to face evictions. And to conclude, I'm glad to be back at City Council after being evicted last time. So I'm wearing a different t-shirt today that I was allowed to wear at the last Toronto Police Services Budget Committee. and chairperson, the chairman, Ms. Morgan, didn't kick me out. So I would like to have an apology from Councilor Nanciata for stepping onto my freedom of expression. I'm not promoting what else the community out there feels about this man, this gentleman. He has ruined our lives, and that is because we don't have rent control, etc., etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel, for a very passionate speech.
You're welcome.
seeing you
Any
here
question?
again.
I'm here 24 hours.
Thank you for your participation. And I see Sheila is here, right? Sheila, you have just arrived. Come on up. See if you can follow Miguel's passionate speech. You have 5 minutes. Let me reset
Thank you.
this. Go.
Make housing our right. I am an ACORN member from the Etobicoke chapter. I'm here, so just a little bit of what ACORN is about. We are a collective action community group and tenant union. I'm here to make a case for vacant home tax and rent-safe TO. We are happy to see that the vacant unit tax has been increased to 3%. This is a good step to help deal with the housing problem in Toronto. For ACON members and renters, it is important that this money is used for housing. Specifically, we would like to see the revenue being used to build more deeply affordable housing or to be used to help cooperatives, nonprofits, and land trust organizations buy at-risk building when they are being sold. We need as much housing as possible off the market and more housing for those in core housing need. And we also think it should be used to improve rent-safe funds, to fund more bylaw officers and turn it into landlord licensing. However, rent-safe TO does not have much teeth. It was never fully implemented. Please see ACORN 2023 State of Repair report. Clearly, rent-safe TO is failing tenants and implementing enforcing bylaws in apartment buildings. We recommend the following changes to improve rent-safe TO. In-unit inspections added to rent-safe to affect evaluation scores, which include building conditions. The city needs to step in to do repairs automatically when landlord ignore repairs through remedial action and bill the landlord on their property tax. More inspectors to protect existing affordable housing. In 2021, RentSafe had 33 full-time staff for 3,500 buildings. We need a ratio similar to the proposed ratio for rooming houses, where there is one inspector per 12.5 buildings. A new fine system, another recommendation, a new fine system to issue major financial penalties to negligent landlords with automatic tickets by inspectors for any property standard violations. Create a rent escrow account at the city so tenants can pay their rents into the city when the landlord is not doing the repairs. The city can then use this account to do the needed repairs themselves. Licensing landlords. The city should move towards a landlord licensing regime. Cities like New Westminster in British Columbia have licensed landlord, for example. Licensing is required to tackle issues like renovations. Color-coded signs, a building rating system like Dying Safe, with signs that clearly display the building rating and advertising 311 for any tenants' issues. The sign would inform tenants of their rights, health and safety concerns, and about rent-safe system.
Sheila, those are good suggestions. However, 5 minutes is up.
Thank you.
If you can just conclude. Okay.
Thank you
so much.
So, just to conclude, rent-safe need to list building owners, not just the property management company.
Got
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming down.
I
to
apologize
City
for
Hall.
going over time.
No problem, not at all. Okay, I see no other speakers. Anyone else? Councillor Bravo on the vacancy question to staff. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for the Housing Secretariat, if there's anyone here that can answer it. Is there? Okay, great, thank you. The question is about, well, first I want to thank the deputants for bringing this important information to us and the support for the city's efforts against speculation in housing. Thank you. I wanted to ask specifically about something I've heard from other tenants, which is the tenants falling into arrears because of the transition from assistance, social assistance, Ontario Works or ODSP, when they start to receive old age security benefits. Is there something that we are doing or something that can be done to deal with this significant problem for tenants who are...
Councillor Bravo, may I urge you to focus on the issue at hand, which is the Vacancy Homes Act, and perhaps talk to Councillor Fletcher, who has reached out regarding
Okay, thank you. I'll get the
issue.
answer from
Okay.
Councillor Fletcher.
Because she had been working the last 10, 20 minutes on it. But on vacancy home, specifically about this issue? Thank you, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I do have questions on that. But yes, there is somebody who's supposed to do that, and I'm on it, and I'll let you know. But okay. One of the issues after the declaration was completed, this is about the status update report. Residents only had the option to save or print their confirmation submission and were not able to retrieve the confirmation after they left the site or completed the submission. Can you add the option for residents to have the record of their submission either emailed or texted or some way they can go in and have that? That is one of the outstanding problems that still exists for vacant home tax.
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Great.
again, it's
Who? I
Casey
can't see
Brendan
where I'm
from
looking.
Revenue Services
Oh,
Division.
there you are. Hi, Casey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher, for your question. Yeah, the answer, in short, is yes. We intend to make available through the property tax lookup your declaration. So if you have done it in the past, if you've made a declaration, you can go into the property tax lookup and retrieve a copy of that document at any point afterwards.
Is that live now, or you're planning on it?
It's not live now, but it is a planned modification to our site.
When would that be happening, since those notices will probably go out? I don't know the time period, but
I think we are looking to have that in place before the end of this year so that it will be available in the declaration period early next year.
I guess I'm looking for more than looking to have it in place. I'm looking to have that in place for residents.
We will have that in place.
It will
for
be in
residents,
place,
yes.
guaranteed.
Yes.
31st of December, 2023. Thank you. In your report, you state that around 12,500 paper declaration forms. That lets us know that there's a whole number of Torontonians that actually don't use the internet, just as we're finding out with access to housing. And these were challenges, 12,500 paper form declarations that were incomplete. So you had to find a way to enter those and clarify the information. And I gather you tried to connect with customers about that. There was reach out if there was incorrect information. But if you couldn't reach the folks, then their property was deemed vacant. How many of those were there? Do you have any idea?
Again, through you, Madam Mayor, the number of declarations, number of properties that were deemed vacant because either no declaration had been received or the information wasn't sufficient to establish that it was occupied. That number continues to drop. Right now, we have about 17,000 of those properties. When we started the program, it was closer to 40,000. We've used the complaint process where people have missed their declaration or realized that we've coded them incorrectly as vacant. We've used the complaint process to allow them to come in to change the status of their property to reflect that it was occupied and therefore not vacant, therefore not subject to the tax. So
Yes,
the number has
but
decreased
this
from 40,000 to 17,000.
This is all about the paper forms, because if you were incorrect in your digital, that's pretty easy to correct, I would say, if something was wrong. But if somebody's using paper, let's say a senior, I'm sure that's who they are, then how many of them of the 12,500 paper ones, did you deem vacant?
I would have to look up that number and get back to you with that information,
So
Councilor.
we can look at that at council and see what percentage of folks you were unable to reach and deem vacant, and how you're communicating with people that don't have the wherewithal to participate electronically with the city. And then are you doing additional outreach for the vacant home tax in 2023? I don't know if there's more staff going to be available at 311, not forever, but for vacant home tax, because we know that there was a big uptick.
Councillor.
Sorry,
Sure.
I'm way over.
Yep.
Thank you. So, yes,
Through the mayor,
question.
if I-
More people during the vacant home tax at 311. What's your plan?
Through the mayor, if I can start, and maybe Casey can finish. I do want to, maybe a point of clarity. So through the process, understanding and reflecting that there would be individuals that weren't able to offer the form electronically or submit it through the
I
internet.
can't see who's talking.
It's-
Oh, over there.
right over
Sorry.
here.
Thank you.
There was an exercise where we actually ensured we had the paper forms available at libraries, at community centers. They could be distributed through calling 311. The 12,500 number actually represents where we as staff manually entered through those paper forms that were
Correct, I know.
supplied. And they were supplied through those outreach efforts that were initiated to ensure that there were opportunities for individuals to be able to do that.
Exactly.
And we would
But
continue to
when they were
roll that out.
incorrect, that was my question about being incorrect. How did you correct them? What happened? And I got my answer there. But it's the 311 answer that I don't have yet.
May I move on to the next questioner?
Through the mayor, I could also respond to that question. My name is Gary York, the executive director for CXD, which is also part of 311. Just the answer to that, we are going to ramp up your staff to deal with those ebbs and flows that come along with a VHT. We'll also pull staff off from the main queue if we have to assist with those call loads. So we'll definitely do that and provide advanced communication to the councilors as well in anticipation, because we're all in this together. But we will put staff, maybe not all the needed staff, but at least better staff levels than they are
Thank you.
today.
Thank you, Mr. York.
You're welcome.
Councillor Carroll. And then Malik.
Yeah, just a quick question. Adding a new exemption for newly built and constructed housing, I'm wondering how we arrived at 2 years. We're providing an exemption, it can be vacant for up to 2 years. That's a long time in a housing supply shortage.
You, Madam Mayor, and in response, Councillor Carroll, the provisions that we've made and the amendments we're suggesting is for newly constructed, never before occupied residential rental units. These would be units in a condominium that have not been sold by the developer. In coming up with the period of time, we actively consulted with the development industry, with BUILD as the association, the Building Industry Land Development Association, with Menkes, with Tridel, and that group actually suggested that 2 years was an appropriate amount of time. They might not sell a brand new unit in the first year, and especially where these units have been pre-sold and then are returned to the developer because the deal doesn't complete. So this was their suggestion, that a 2-year window was sufficient, that any unsold stock should be sold within that 2-year period.
So is it not possible that if it takes them 2 years to sell it in the middle of a housing crisis, that they're asking the wrong price? And given the average price for a condo unit, I believe, is under 30 days right now, if you're asking the right price. I think it's 28 days or something like that for a condo unit in a high rise, if you're asking what is actual market value.
So
2 years seems like the kind of thing you might expect the development industry to suggest.
This is meant to capture those cases. Most condominium units will, in fact, sell in a shorter period of time. There is an exemption also if the year of transfer of the condominium, you are exempt from the vacant home tax. So this would only sort of kick in where you have a hard-to-sell unit, and the development industry suggested a 3-bedroom unit. They don't sell very often. They may take longer to sell.
Yes, I've had developers tell me that because that's why they don't want to build them, and yet when they do build them, they curiously sell. I'm wondering, maybe between now and council, we could do a little work on this one, perhaps change it to from the end of that year of being added to the rolls, just 12 more months, because in the current supply, it sticks out like a sore thumb that if it takes you 2 years, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 bedrooms, you're asking the wrong price. Does that make any sense?
Yes, we can. Yes, of course. We can certainly go back and take that back and have further discussions with the industry on that.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, I don't want the wording to be on the fly and clumsy here. So I'm going to endeavor to take this offline, and maybe we'll have a motion in time for council that makes a little more sense to the market. Maybe even Trev can help us on this one. I just don't want to leave this opinion up to the builder. Thank you.
Good point. Deputy Mayor Malik, do you want a question or a question? Okay.
Thank you very much. The report states that over 19,000 homes have been deemed or declared vacant, and I just wanted to hear a little bit more about how this aligns with the city's previous estimates.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the city had projected a 1% vacancy rate based on the Vancouver experience. So we were expecting, and our budget estimates were based on 1% of all residential units would be vacant. For Toronto, there are 811,000 residential units. 1% would suggest approximately 8,100 vacant units in Toronto. So right now, we are about twice that number, but that reflects undeclared units where we have not received a declaration. And that also includes people who may still file an appeal or a complaint. So we do expect that number to come down. We're projecting actually between 8,000 and 10,000 units are actually vacant at the end of this program.
So you're seeing an alignment with the city's previous estimates?
It's about 1%, both in terms of numbers and in terms of budgetary estimates, projections.
Thank you. As we know, the report recommends increasing the vacant home tax to 3% for 2024. How do you see that affecting the need for housing availability in Toronto?
Clearly, what we expect to see with an increase from 1% to 3% is higher compliance with the vacancy provisions, in that more people will be compelled to put their units either up for sale or rent them out. So we will see an actual decline in the number of vacant units. So if we have 8,000 units or a 1% vacancy rate, the increase to 3% in the tax rate is going to see that number decline. More units available for occupancy.
Thank you, and I just have one final question. One of the concerns for my ward, shared right across the city, is regarding short-term rentals and the effect that they have on housing stock and vacancy rates. Do we have any data in this regard yet from the numbers that you've gathered?
Short-term rentals, they don't factor into the vacant home tax, because the vacant home tax requires that you are vacant for a period of 6 months or longer. So short-term rentals, we haven't sort of counted those numbers within these tallies.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Malik raises an interesting area that I'd like to get your thoughts on, and it's this emerging category of seasonal rentals that we're now seeing some of the online rental companies like Airbnb list properties at, and those are for extended stays. Has thought been given by the Toronto Public Service to not the short-term rentals, but this emerging category of seasonal rentals and how they relate to this notion of vacant homes?
Go ahead, Carlton.
Did I stump you all? Carlton's got it. Carlton to the rescue.
Not necessarily.
I'm not at 3 minutes, no way.
No, the last couple of questions do relate to municipal licensing and standards as the regulator and enforcer of short-term rentals. We are bringing a report by the end of this year that looks at this question. The medium and longer-term rentals is an emerging trend. It's not something that we have the authority to license or regulate. It's with the province. It's something that it is an emerging trend as people move from long-term rentals to short-term rentals, and the short-term rentals is 28 days or less. So again, it is a body of work that's outstanding that we are looking at, and we will be reporting back on this and the nature of it by the end of the year.
So just since I've got you, are you aware of seasonal rentals that would run to this 6-month period?
Anecdotally, we have heard of 1 month, 2 months, 6 months types of rentals. Again, we do not have the authority over the 28 days. It is a gray area that we need to explore.
Okay, I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
On this item, anyone want to speak on this? Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, just to follow up on my questions, that according to Treb, the length of days on market in the city of Toronto is 19 for a condo. 19 days on the market. That's if you're selling it for the right price. So I'm gonna work with staff because I don't want to make clumsy language. And so we have to take into account, when did it go on the rolls, or when did the occupancy permit get, if the occupancy permit was in February, even if we gave them that year, then the exemption period should really, at the most generous, could be 12 months. And that would still give that particular person that they occupied in February, would be giving them almost 2 years. So I think we've just got to tighten up the language a little bit so that that gray area where they're clearly just asking too much for this unit gets shortened to 12 months. But I want to make sure that we get the language just right. Given that the consultations did take place and we're making a big adjustment, then we'll make sure that we've got really good tight language and move that at council. And I think the industry will be just fine, given that right price departments are selling in 19 days.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you. From this report, it is clear that the vacant homes tax is such a critical step in increasing housing supply. It not only will raise funds to help secure and strengthen initiatives like the multi-unit residential acquisition program, but as we heard, also the additional costs encouraging landlords to rent their units and to make an immediate difference in the crisis of housing that we're seeing here. And folks, especially in my ward, I hear it every single day, who are just desperate to be able to call Toronto home, imagine a future here. And we also heard the number, which is a pretty staggering. I mean, we have then 19,000 homes that have been deemed vacant or declared that way, and that there lies the question. There's at least 10,000 there, but it could be much more, and that's really important. We have to address the issue of empty units being left for investment speculation, the issue of illegal short-term rentals that is live and evolving in this city, and this has to be a step in taking that seriously and being more sophisticated in how we respond to that to maximize the impact of an initiative like the vacant homes tax. I'm excited to see the success of this program as we continue to increase the percentage of the vacant homes tax, and just really want to thank staff for their work on this matter. Look forward to supporting the recommendations, and also to thank all the Torontonians who made the effort to, go to the lengths that it took to fill out those forms, to call all of us and ask those questions, and to be diligent about that. What we also heard was through this process, we're going to improve the way that happens, so that it's nothing that we're thinking twice about. It's just a matter of addressing the issues that we are seeing so urgently in the city.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mayor. The focus that I had really on this one was the customer service aspect of the vacant homes tax, which I know a number of councillors, and myself included, were quite concerned about that rollout last year, very critical of the rollout, and our staff were overwhelmed by people calling that they couldn't have access. Some of the questions that I asked, we can't retrieve our form. I'm very happy to hear that it will be done by December, but I'm very unhappy to hear it's not already done, to be honest with you. I think that given the issue, that should have been long looked after. And I'll be watching closely for that date. As a matter of fact, I think it should be brought up. It shouldn't be December 31st. It should be very quickly, so that people can get what they've sent in and see it. I am also always concerned about those people that don't have digital access, electronic access, web access. We know who they are. There's seniors in all of our communities. You know who they are. They come to your office and they have their little handwritten things, and they simply can't interface on the internet. I raised earlier the access to housing, the problems with accessing that if you don't have internet connection, and if you aren't wealthy and you are not on data, but you're texting everybody, you can't actually interface in that way. So I still am concerned about this, and I look forward to knowing the number of outstanding ones that we have where people's homes were declared vacant when they might not have been vacant, and how we're fixing that. Because I just want to go back, it is customer service. We're adding something very new. We added a brand-new program with very, I'm sorry to say, I think we'd all agree, very poor customer service for the Torontonians who were part of that. It was confusing. We had to send something out a second time. And we didn't take into account that a lot of people are going to be sending things in manually. And then the number of people, Mr. York was here, that are actually answering the phone, people we know there's going to be an uptick, and when we know that, planning for 311, I think, is quite important. On top of that, I do want to say some of the issues that are being raised here, Councillor Malik spoke about Airbnb. You know, you have to have it as your principal residence or you're renting. Because currently the holes in Airbnb are so big that people are renting but not under the Landlord-Tenant Act. It's basically illegal renting for more than 28 days. It's not their primary residence. What are we doing, and how does that get caught in the vacant home tax? Technically, it's vacant. It's not being properly rented, and you're not living there. So I think that a lot of us will be starting to really look into that aspect, because we can't find our way in, but we need to find our way in, because there were 20,000 and now there's 12,000 homes, potentially rentable homes, that are listed on the platform over 28 days that are sitting in a limbo. And I think unwinding that would be very important. So just to flag that this is a road that a number of us will be going down on the vacant home tax. Thank you.
Councillor Bravo and Perks.
I think Councillor Malik and Councillor Fletcher spoke very well to this limbo piece around Airbnb. I just wanted to add that Councillor Myers and myself had a lot of exchanges with staff when this was rolled out, and want to remind everyone that this is a great program. We really need it. In my ward, the majority of people who had difficulty with engaging with it were actually immigrant, working class people who are elderly, income poor but house rich, and were very frightened by the way that the notices were initially delivered. Let's remember that people in Toronto have primary language other than English, and in my case, the language was Portuguese primarily, and Councillor Myers' case, it was Chinese seniors, and that we need to ensure that we have materials in an accessible, translated format, so that our offices can work with community-based partners to ensure that people are getting help, and so that we're very clear, we have the script, so that when we are providing second language services, we're not having to do the translation ourselves. I think it's a really important part of the rollout.
Okay, good. Councillor Perks.
Thank you. It's interesting reflecting on this conversation. We have some excellent work done by city staff to try to get the vacant homes tax done. We have work that was perhaps uneven in terms of how we dealt with communicating that out to the public, and had real painful consequences for Torontonians. Councillor Carroll has pointed out a piece about the length of time it takes to get units registered. Councillor Malik is talking about short-term rentals. The issue of seasonal rentals has already also emerged. Do you know what all of this has in common? It's once again the City of Toronto having to step in to fill a broken provincial regulatory framework. I mean, honestly, it says Landlord-Tenant Act, but it really should just say Landlord Act. And it's frustrating for all of us that we have to, without the correct legislative authority, scramble to try to make sure that the rental system in the City of Toronto actually functions. And it just doesn't. And it doesn't because the province of Ontario doesn't care. It's so much like the issue that we face trying to get supportive housing. The province is supposed to provide funding for support workers, and they don't. And we scramble to try to backfill that hole. I know that many of us here on this committee, and I know that the mayor committed to this too, are working towards a stronger dialogue with tenants in the city of Toronto so that we can work collectively with them to get the province to have a coherent system so that in a housing crisis, tenants are protected, units are not just treated as investment properties and banked against the day when you might be able to rent them more, or taken out of the rental system entirely and treated like a hotel. And, you know, good on all of us that we're pulling on bits and pieces and threads, but let's get together as a council, work with the tenant organizations in the city of Toronto and fight for real regulatory reform in how the province regulates rental properties.
On that note, I see any other speaker from Councillor here? If not, if I get you, in the speaker, as deputants, one person was late. If I may ask you to allow me to bring her in, she just arrived. Her name is Alejandra Ruiz Vargas. Okay, my Spanish is not very good, but you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Alejandra Ruiz Vargas, and I am an ACORN leader and the chair of East York chapter of ACORN. We are a collective action community group at Tenant Union. We have 40,000 members here in the city of Toronto. So we are happy to see the vacant home tax being increased to 3%. This is an okay step to help deal with the housing problems in Toronto. And I cannot agree more for what Councillor Gorper said. So we are in a crisis, so we need to deal this as a crisis. So it's important that this money is used for more deep affordable housing, health co-ops, land trusts, and no-profits via risk buildings and turning rent safe into landlord licensing. So we really are going to have a better control for the tenants. But we found some problematic things about the tax around the sections, that we see 2-year sections for newly constructed buildings or units we should think that should be lower to 1 year. Also multi-unit buildings being exempt if they had at least 1 unit occupied seems like a problem. In our experience, landlords keep multiple units vacant in their buildings when they are trying to drive tenants out. So when land value increases due to various things like improved transit, and they feel it is their economic interest to go from a regular rental to a luxury rental. We know that because we have knocked around 30,000 doors across Toronto every year for the last 19 years. So this we have been doing in the most affordable rental units across the city. We come across large buildings that are very empty. Also, as part of driving out tenants who are in rent control units for a long period of time, landlords don't do any repairs and letting the unit fall way below the municipal code. So it takes them much longer to bring the unit up to minimum standards. We can speak all about 500 doors building that is in a super bad shape and very difficult to get to standard code right now because that. Every incentive should be for them to get units quickly back on the market and keep them units maintained. And it is a mistake for us to not realize that many of the low-end market buildings had units vacant, just sitting there and not being rented. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and we hope so that you can take note of this and make it a reality.
That pretty well summarized it all, doesn't it? Thank you for your time. Thank you for rushing down to City Hall here. Seeing no other speaker, all those in favor of the motion in front of us? All right, Carrie, thank you. That's great. Councillor Cole, sorry, Deputy Mayor Cole, your motion is now ready.
Yes.
Allowed me to go back to item 8.6, small business property tax subclass review. And may I have that motion right in front of you that hopefully captured what you said?
Yes, it did. Thank Casey Brendan, our tax guru, for helping with this. The City Council requests the Minister of Finance to include an assessment of the appropriateness of using highest and best use as a valuation principle on their assessment of commercial properties, as opposed to using current and actual use in the Government of Ontario's review of the property assessment system deployed by Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. So that's my motion.
All right, since Councillor Cole has spoken about it, all those in favor of the motion, opposed, carry, thank you. And Councillor Carroll's motion, that was on that item, all those in favor, you've seen it, you moved it. This is the subclass. You did it last
sorry,
time.
subclass,
Yeah, we just
sorry.
haven't dealt with that
Sorry, I
item
was
yet.
just typing
All those
something
in
else and I
favor,
missed what
yep,
you were
don't
talking.
worry. Approved, carry, item as amended, all those in favor, thank you. We are now in the next item, 8.8, ConnectTO program. Internet access. By the way, you noticed today, the subways, the U-shaped subways, we got access. It's not just Rogers, now Telus and Bell, woo-hoo. Why did it take so long? It's done, okay, but now this is the entire ConnectTO program. We have some speakers here. James Davis, it's on speaking about internet, is coming in via video. Here he is, okay. Nice background, wish I'm there. The trees, okay. You have 5 minutes. For some reason, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Good morning.
Yep, now we can hear you. Go for it.
Wonderful. My name is James Davis, and I am part of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at TMU, the beautiful campus of which I'm presently on, so please excuse any background noise. I have 3 goals for today. First, to demonstrate to Council the enormous untapped potential of democratizing digital access. Second, the qualitative importance, the human angle rather, of why high-speed, unlimited broadband is essential to the success of our beloved city. And third, why the amount requested by the department, just about $870,000, is not an expense contributing to the ongoing budget crisis, but instead an investment that will pay off for all 3 levels of government for decades to come. According to the 2021 Digital Divide Survey commissioned by the city, just about 2% of households are not connected to the internet at all. And based on 2021 data, that reflects about 23,218 households with no internet access, a majority pinning this down to cost. This is largely consisting of new Canadians, single mothers, and the elderly, who I don't need to tell Council are some of the hardest working, most entrepreneurial, and greatest net contributors to the city in general and to our local communities in particular. It was true up to a point in the early 2010s where having internet was a choice. There was fundamental analog alternatives that one could use to create, express, and contribute to our city. And in my view, this is no longer the case in any practical or meaningful way. I argue, therefore, that not having adequate internet access is equivalent to being shut out of meaningful democratic participation, lock, stock, and barrel. Now, I am aware that the same line of thinking can be applied to many other crises that fall under the umbrella of the ongoing budgetary crisis. And so why, therefore, would we spend almost $1 million extra scarce dollars to fix this particular issue when obviously housing and TTC need all the help they can get? Well, right away, it starts with having access minimally defined by the CRTC, enables people to work from home. More people working from home means fewer cars on the road, fewer people using publicly funded transit systems, fewer carbon emissions from commuting and the office sector, and greater overall productivity for things like Toronto work crews and those businesses that depend on being on the roads. While the overall data is a touch scarce, the concept of internet access democratization is experimental. We can rely on the principle that fewer people attempting to use the same public space makes it work more efficiently in the short term, and this saves the city money over the long term. More importantly, however, giving people greater and importantly, instant access to education, work, and a more meaningful seat at the democratic table enables them to produce many times more economic output. I would picture a single parent, for example, that is able to start their own digital marketing agency on the city's brand new public Wi-Fi canopy. Maybe it's not much. Maybe it's another $1,000 to $2,000 a month in revenue, but with one single category of public infrastructure investment in a Wi-Fi canopy, the city enables such an individual to be able to put more food on the table, be less dependent on food banks, less worried about skyrocketing rent or mortgage payments. And very importantly, with one investment, she has greater agency, sovereignty, and self-reliance. Maybe this means another $200 to invest every month in the capital markets, putting this family on the path to more permanent stability, comfortable retirement, and even passing some wealth on to the next generation. This is a story that will play out tens of thousands of times in infinitely different and impactful ways, but the end result is always happier, healthier, wealthier, and more productive members of our society. $800, given all of that, is not a super massive amount to invest in this area. Providing access to the real economy, which is in practice what we're discussing today, is a foundational priority because for reasons that I just mentioned, it relieves so much pressure on the city to solve other crises, such as food, housing, the cost of transportation. It makes it all much, much easier to solve with just a single investment. Thank you very much, Council. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you so much. Any questions to deputants? Yes, Councilor Ainsley.
Thank you, Mayor Cho. James, is there anything in the report that you would like to see added to it?
I would like to see all the recommendations of the report implemented. I think this is, again, a very experimental issue that hasn't been widely tested in many municipalities, but I think continuous measured investment so we can see real data-driven results over time going forward for the city.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Cho.
Thank you. Any other questions? Next speaker, Adam Roy, also on video. And then after him, Rama Faisal. Adam, are you there? And the next one is Marcy Stone. That is Marcy here physically? Oh, okay, just give me a second. Let's finish this first. Adam, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Unfortunately, I am wearing earmuffs because they are doing fire alarm testing in my building. And I do hope they don't interrupt me when I'm doing this deputation. The two things I want to talk to you about is if it could be looked at, if there is extra black fiber in the system, like we've already understand. There is some in the TTC. And now this connects to ConnectTO is I am requesting that for the individuals that cannot or do not have the right data subscription for using the subway system's new data, which is going to be 5G, is having Wi-Fi that does not rely on the 5G system and does not rely on your cell provider when down in the subway within the 3-year plan would be a plus. The other thing I am requesting is that the city look at making sure that in most areas, the HOTS, the areas where there is a ConnectTO hub is within less than a kilometer, preferably half a kilometer. And I also think it does need to be looked at in parks, especially in the parks with shelters, that the ConnectTO provide access in park spaces so people enjoying the park can also have access to Wi-Fi. Maybe they want to take their e-reader that has Wi-Fi access but doesn't necessarily connect to the internet. Or maybe they want to use their tablet that doesn't connect to the internet out in the park on a day. Now that the screens on those devices can go a bit brighter, they are very usable outside. So those are the two things I really want looked at, especially the for Wi-Fi access in the subway system. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your participation. Any questions for Adam? If not, Rama Fayez, are you there, Rama? On video. Rama, are you there? Here,
I am
here
here.
you are. Nice
Yes.
background, but where are
Yeah,
you?
thank you very much. I am here. My video is not working, so I just read what I have to
Okay, you have 5 minutes?
So thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, councillors and Madam Mayor. My name is Rama Fayyaz. I am a member of ACORN and the chair of the Downtown ACORN chapter. ACORN, as you know, is a collective action community group which brings tenants, seniors, and other people with low and middle income together to fight for change. We are very happy to see ConnectTO moving forward as we have worked to have this program for many, many years. Our goal has always been free or cheap internet for people with lower income, and we have been able to help have parts of this plan approved. For example, Toronto Community Housing now offers a lower price internet for the tenants and also cheaper internet for seniors. As we all know, Canada's internet prices are among the highest among the G7 countries, and it is somewhere around the second highest actually. Affordable internet and access to free Wi-Fi is very important for people with low and moderate income across the city. Our economy and government related tasks are now aligned. We need internet for basic daily activities like doing schoolwork for kids, looking and applying for jobs, doctor appointments, going into the CRA account, and much more. So this is why people need affordable internet at home. It's necessary for them. Free internet in places like libraries are great, but it's not always convenient for many essential things we need the internet for. So ACORN members would like to see the program expand Wi-Fi to as many public places as possible. Places like parks and other government-owned buildings in low and moderate income neighborhoods. Low-income people across the city need free Wi-Fi on the TTC also. Recently, as you said, Rogers announced that now all of the major Canadian wireless carriers can access its network, but this is all for paid data. Free Wi-Fi would make this one step more inclusive to all people in Toronto and help move the city forward to digital equity. And public fiber in new housing also is important. With new housing that is built in Toronto using government tax breaks, incentives, or on public land, we need to ensure that public fiber is installed. This will help create public networks in these buildings. The federal affordable internet programs do help, but they're voluntary programs and the telecoms can opt out if they choose. If we had a different federal government, it would be very easy for these telecoms to just decide to end the federal Connecting Families and also Connected for Success programs. Furthermore, these programs only serve some low-income families and some low-income people. These programs are not universal for low-income people. And also the municipal broadband program, which is a larger project and of course need a larger budget. In the medium term, we want to see ConnectTO start to explore a municipal broadband program using city-owned dark fiber lines. And it has to be owned by the public, controlled by the public, and to operate like a public utility, something like Toronto Hydro. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much about digital equity. Our next, any questions to the deputy? If not, Marcy, you're here. Five minutes.
And I'm here to discuss, my name is Marcia Stone. I am the ACORN Leader Co-Chair of the Western Chapter. And ACORN is a collective community action group and tenant union. Happy to see ConnectTO moving forward. Glad to see that internet is being offered on the TTC and all the transit. However, people don't live in the trains. People don't live in the subways. Everything since COVID hit has relied on internet. And we know that whether you can afford the packages that Rogers and Bell have, it's ridiculous because once upon a time, they offered a Connecting Families program as well as another program that my daughter is now taking advantage of. And that's the $10 a month internet. So my question is, why can't they bring that back? Because of the fact that every single thing that we have to do on a daily basis is on the internet. It's digital media. It's this, that, and the other. Cable. I pay $100 for internet and I live in a nonprofit building. So there's no plans for anybody can't come up with a plan for seniors or low to moderate income people. When the kids had to go on virtual, kids were sitting outside libraries, sitting on the sidewalks just because they wanted to attend school and they wanted to learn. That was their option. It broke my heart to see that because we live in Ontario. We live in Canada. And so why is it that the money, the monopoly is only on these two companies? We need to publicly fund our own internet system and digital media system. This is the 2023. We're not living in the dark ages, and people have to rely on this. This is where we're at. Every company wants you to sign up for something. You have to register for every single thing. Not everybody has that opportunity, and as well, language barriers. Why aren't we working with a lot of these associations? We have a lot of groups in the city. We're a cultural city. There's associations that are supposed to be there to help people integrate into the city. So why not are we not tapping into those resources and helping people live a full and you know, life? Everything requires internet and media. You know, monopoly, you know, it's ridiculous that these people have the monopoly. And again, during COVID, they're making an arm and a leg when people are struggling just to survive. You know, you can't work from home if you don't have internet. Can't have internet if you can't afford it. And that's ridiculous to me. We need to invest in creating our own publicly funded fiber and let Bell and Rogers do their thing. With a community or government controlled network, the city could ensure that prices are affordable for low and moderate income people. And it's also been, ACORN members have also been made aware that some of our members are experiencing a lack of access to monitoring. So if you have internet or cable, whatever, and you have a buzzer system, you can't access that, but you can't monitor who's ringing your buzzer unless you have their service. Some people, I have internet. Some people may have an antenna. If they have an antenna or other types of devices to be able to get something into their homes, they're not getting that access. So, you know, we have to be, it's like we have to write everything down, define exactly what we want, as we were saying earlier. No legalese. It doesn't have to be legalese because people don't, everyday people don't understand legalese. People are talking over here on top of their heads and they don't have anybody to help explain to them. And so therefore, if we want to help with the, you know, we want to help everybody, that as much people as we possibly can to end this digital divide, we have to work together and we have to come up with some seriously strong worded material in order for us to be able to move forward. You know, water system is publicly owned. I'm just saying, there's no reason why we can't publicly own our own media, digital media company. Thank you very much. It irritates me. It just, no, I'm sorry, because I can become very emotional. I am a senior, and I'm grateful that I am able to do what I can for myself, but it's the others that I see that can't do for themselves or can't speak for themselves, or don't have somebody to help them, as our other sister spoke earlier. So we need to do better. And this is a good way to get to it.
Thank you, Marcia. Well said again. Any questions to the deputants? We have one more speaker, August Parav. August, come on up. You're our last speaker.
Hello, Mayor Chow and councilors. My name is August Pernot. I'm speaking on behalf of TTC Riders. TTC Riders is a grassroots membership-based organization of transit users here in Toronto, advocating for a better transit system. And one of the ways to make the TTC better for riders is to provide free public Wi-Fi in the transit system, including subway tunnels. We heard earlier that, cell service plans are very expensive. Not everyone can afford to have a cell service plan. So even though today we have cell service for all carriers in the subway, that doesn't mean everyone has access because not everyone can afford a cell service plan. That's why it's so important to have free public Wi-Fi access. We support the recommendations in this report, but the TTC was not among the agencies consulted with in preparation of the report before you. One of the recommendations in this report, 2A, is to explore potential utilization of all city, agency, and corporation network assets to deliver efficient and cost-effective services. The TTC is one of the largest agencies of the city, and it should be among the municipal assets leveraged for ConnectTO. In February 2021, Council directed staff to work with and request support from multiple city staff and agencies, including the TTC CEO, to develop a strategic framework and work plan for ConnectTO. ConnectTO is expected to have the highest level of impact on people who currently do not have access to reliable, affordable, high-speed internet, who are disproportionately lower income, racialized, and elderly communities. The 2021 broadband study found that 34% of households worry about paying their internet bills. I am one of those households. I worry about paying my own internet bills every single month because I spend most of my money on rent. These households are predominantly single parent, lower income, and racialized. TTC riders are also disproportionately lower income and racialized. So bringing free public Wi-Fi to the TTC would have a high level of impact on people who need high-speed internet the most. Public Wi-Fi in the TTC will also make transit riders feel safer. While cell service is coming to the subway, as I said, Wi-Fi is needed as well because not everyone can afford a cell phone plan or has enough data available at the end of the month because sometimes it runs out.
That's a good idea.
As noted in the report, it is much cheaper to add fiber optic infrastructure during construction of new infrastructure. So Rogers' current build-out of telecom infrastructure is one such opportunity to expand fiber optic infrastructure for public Wi-Fi in the subway tunnels. It's also possible that such infrastructure already exists. The tunnels of the Vaughan extension of Line 1 has dark fiber or just unused fiber optic infrastructure, and it's used for communication between the stations. The 2017 Toronto broadband study noted that BAI is building fiber optic infrastructure in the subway, and in 2018 they announced that they had installed that fiber optic infrastructure. Of course, there's other elements that are needed to enable Wi-Fi on subway trains, but one ingredient is the fiber optic cable in the tunnels, and it seems that we already have some of that. That is why we think it is important for the TTC to be included in ConnectTO so that City Council can understand whether there is already available fiber in the tunnels and if there isn't, to ensure that a public fiber optic cable gets installed while Rogers is currently building out its network. The other component of Wi-Fi on subway trains is the trains themselves. Unfortunately, the TTC canceled its request for proposals for new subway trains on Line 2, and those would have been able for Wi-Fi, but because of lack of provincial and federal funding, we don't have that anymore. It would be possible to install the necessary components on existing trains too, but we need new trains so that the TTC is also safe and reliable in the future. The TTC is an important public space in the city. Nearly 1 million people per day use the subway, and having free public Wi-Fi would bring connectivity to many who need it the most in between going home and going to school and other activities. We strongly encourage City Council to work towards free public Wi-Fi on all TTC property, including the subway, tunnels, include all TTC and transit infrastructure assets in ConnectTO. If Toronto or TTC-owned fiber does not already exist in subway tunnels, ensure that publicly owned fiber is installed in TTC tunnels, as Rogers and potentially other companies also install their telecom infrastructure at the same time, and leverage opportunities provided by new transit construction to install public fiber, especially in the new transit projects happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion. Any questions to Deputy? No? Thank you. On the item, Councillor, no speaker. Question to staff? Oh, yeah, yes, and Councillor Ainsley also.
Thank you very much. This update report talks about the many actions that staff have taken since the last report. We also heard from the deputants about, the opportunities and the necessity for low-cost broadband network for lower-income residents and seniors. Can you share with us the progress that has been made towards expanding access to broadband services for residents?
Through the mayor. I'm just going to introduce myself, Sonia Brar. I'm the new CTO for City of Toronto. I joined back in June. Thank you for your question. In terms of progress that's been made, so there are 3 objectives that the ConnectTO program set out to accomplish. One was to expand free public Wi-Fi. The second is to optimize city-owned fiber. And then the third was to explore in conjunction with private, a way to again expand in residents, free Wi-Fi as well. In terms of progress against these 3, so on the free public Wi-Fi access, there's been considerable progress since the last update. I'm happy to report that there are 74 spaces across the city. These are community centers, parks, public spaces that currently have free public Wi-Fi available. In addition to that, there are 8 Toronto Community Housing Centres that are also equipped with public Wi-Fi as well. On the third action that I mentioned, so there was a digital canopy program that was put in place in conjunction with private support in gaining funding. So in that partnership, there are 22 buildings as well in underserved communities that have been equipped with Wi-Fi as well that supports about 11,000 residents. On the second action around optimizing, there were some options that were considered, but there's more work to be done in terms of how we leverage the owned fiber across our various agencies and corporations.
Okay, thank you. So it seems that currently there are many fiber networks or leasing arrangements between the city divisions, agencies, and corporations. Is the city working with other agencies and corporations to create opportunities for efficiencies and more connected networks?
Through the mayor, we are looking at how we can collaborate with the other corporations and agencies. I think there were some initial discussions that have been had, but in reality, we do need to kick this off again more formally and bring the corporations and agencies to the table.
So this week we heard a great deal in the news and from our experience about the service providers offering service in the subway system. Can you speak a little bit more to the extent that the TTC was involved in your discussions regarding ConnectTO, and how do you see their involvement?
Through the mayor, there were discussions earlier this year with the TTC, but again, I think we need to have more formal conversation, partnering with the TTC on the work they're doing on cell service, which seems to be progressing really well, but also how we can leverage some of their infrastructure to expand Wi-Fi.
I think we've also heard a lot about the equity piece as it relates to ConnectTO, the process and its outcomes. Can you just speak a little bit more, maybe give us some of the highest priorities about how the proposal coming from ConnectTO addresses the digital divide in our city?
Through the mayor, Deputy Mayor Malik, just wanted to actually just go back to a few years back when we were looking at the whole ConnectTO program. We looked at our entire asset pool across the city, including agencies and corporations, and said, let's try to see what we could unlock our assets, which is our fiber, and interconnect the fibers across the organization, including agencies, corps, and divisions, right? So the intent is actually to be able to get those connections, those interconnections, which we have to obviously invest into, and then actually make sure that the delivery of our services to the public are there. And excess capacity that we would have, we would actually put the business case forward back to council and also look at service providers actually providing what they would call the last mile, which would be to the public. So that was the intent, and that's the approach we're taking. And I think that that's probably a very important step that we need to take to come back with the appropriate business case. Hopefully that helped.
Thank you.
Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question, I wanted to ask about the recommendations in the report. The last one talks about a 2025 deadline. I was wondering if you would be open to having this report back in a specific quarter, the second quarter of 2025?
Through the mayor, yes, we can make that happen.
Okay, all right. And then I wanted to ask in the report where we talked about partners, and I was happy to see the mention of the Toronto Public Library and the work that the Toronto Public Library is doing there. But I didn't see any mention of potential partnerships with schools or the universities that we have in Toronto. Is that something that'll be looked at within this plan?
Through you, Mayor, we have looked at the Toronto District School Board, Toronto Catholic School Board, as well as other agencies, and conversations continue, but they operate under some different circumstances than we have been so far, but we're certainly open to that possibility.
Okay, all right. And then When we talk about putting Wi-Fi in public spaces or buildings, and I can say as a city councillor, the people that come into my ward that are into my office that are the neediest, and I hear most of that need Wi-Fi to look for a job. You know, the computers are busy all the time at the library. Is there like a pecking order, for lack of a better word, of where you're looking at installing Wi-Fi accessibility in the future?
Through you, Mayor, we are looking at digital equity as a whole, so that includes connectivity, adequate connectivity for the work that needs to be done, as well as devices. So we were fortunate to receive some donations through the pandemic. For example, we're able to work with the Toronto Aboriginal Support Services Council to distribute 500 free smartphones to the community where there was need. But those are, you know, those were very dependent on donations and accessibility, I mean, access to those devices. We also have a program ongoing under the Technology Services Division around digital accessibility overall, and that would all be part of our digital equity policies. Thank you.
Okay, and then there's no mention of partnering with telecommunication companies or how they're being involved as we just struggled through trying to get Wi-Fi publicly accessible on the TTC, and we had to bring in the federal government, and they overall are, the telcos are responsible to the federal government. How are we involving them or any potential partnership, or is that being looked at?
Through the mayor, we do have some upcoming meetings with the telcos, so those are in the works. Rogers did also support the digital canopy program that I spoke about, so there has been some involvement, but there are some upcoming discussions to make sure that they stay close to this.
So if I could just add to what Sonia said, Councillor Angie through the mayor, after we actually do the review of all of the interconnections and actually with the fiber and the excess capacity, we will be obviously putting something out there to the service providers. Could be Rogers, could be Bell, it could be any other service provider, smaller ones too, that they could actually respond to it. So they will be involved through that process too.
Okay, and then the other recommendation I had some questions about, 2B, where it talks about in-building wiring and fiber connectivity infrastructure. And sorry, this is my down in the weeds question, but a lot of the reading I've done says that costs around connectivity can be minimized by fixed wireless access using radio frequency and not hardwiring a building. It's much cheaper and efficient, and as technology is evolving, it's much more cost effective than in building wiring up a system. So as technology evolves and we're looking at all of that, so in building wiring is not, for lack of a better word, carved in stone.
Through the mayor, it's not carved in stone. We're being open to the options that we can deploy that are cost effective.
Okay, and then, sorry, Madam Mayor, I just have one more question. So I kind of got all of the ball rolling on this in 2019 when I got members' motion to get the city sign the city's coalition for digital rights. That was in 2019. Is there like an end goal to when this project will be fully implemented? Or is this going to be an ongoing project?
Through the mayor, I think two responses to that. I think part of it will be ongoing as the needs evolve in the city. So we do find, like, some of the research that was done was earlier in 2019. We are looking to refresh that research and understand if there are larger communities or new people that we need to support. So from that perspective, I think we'll see that there's some ongoing work. Secondly, I know my colleague Josie spoke about the report that we're working on. I think that will help dictate what the size of the program is and what the options are. We can come back with a more complete plan.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Chow.
Thank you. Councilor Bravo.
Thank you, Mayor Chow. Through you, I wanted to, thank you to the deputants, and clearly connection is actually crucial for realizing the ability to work within the economy and society and even participate in democracy. So this is really important, I think, and for people in the city. I wanted to ask about the answers that were given around the utilization of the city agency and corporation network assets, particularly around the agency and corporation network. What are the impediments so far to proceeding more quickly there? And from a governance perspective, do you need further authority to make sure that that happens more quickly and effectively?
Through the mayor, we don't need more authority to work with our partners. I'm new to the role. We do have an upcoming table coming up in November where we have the partners at the table and we'll be taking back the recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no other questioners speaking on the item. Deputy Mayor Malik and Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you very much. I do have a motion. I don't have to say it again. We've heard it and we know it from our own lives that the internet is a necessity. And as a city, we have to meet our commitments to equity, and we have to be a city where we can all belong by not deepening the digital divide, but by closing it. To access government services, to participate in decision-making and democracy, as Councillor Bravo said, to keep informed, to take action in our city. Internet access is needed to fulfill our needs in a timely manner. Just last week, committee members were discussing a pilot to have parking passes solely available through a mobile app. Today, we just heard about the Vacant Homes Declaration requiring internet access for ease and effectiveness. As we make the internet a necessity for our residents to provide more efficiencies and more options, we have to also be able to provide more options to be able to access the internet. And as we heard from some of the deputants, beyond a terminal at our local library, which we know is such a lifeline to jobs and information, but we must do more. Toronto needs local, affordable, accessible access to broadband internet. ConnectTO is moving us in the right direction through free, accessible Wi-Fi. We need access across the city, starting with our city's own buildings, plazas, and transit. Those 74 sites are very promising, but we know it needs so much more. This work must include future projects, including housing and TTC expansion, to ensure everyone is working together to make this a reality. And my motion requests all city departments, and I believe all city departments do have an interest in this work, to coordinate with the Chief Technology Officer to ensure all of those divisions are working together to build the infrastructure necessary to make this a reality. Again, I want to thank all the staff for their work on this file. I'm looking forward to our work together to continue to move us in the direction of digital equity and to be able to be an example of how this is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Mayor Chow. I have a simple motion to move, simply amending recommendation number 4 so that staff report back to the executive committee in the second quarter of 2025. This is a very important program for residents right across the city, and I want to make sure it keeps moving. And we have concrete benchmarks for having staff report back. When I moved a member's motion in 2019 for the City of Toronto. We joined over 100 cities around the world in the city's coalition for digital rights. And the premise or basis of that coalition is declaring that every resident should have access to accessible and affordable internet on equal terms. And I think this is a key priority for us in the City of Toronto, the largest city in Canada. We just saw how much people need demand for Wi-Fi on our subway system as you're trying to live your daily lives, getting back and forth to work, making use of your time on the subway, making appointments, even telecommunicating with your work. And when we talk about equal and affordable Wi-Fi for everybody, just some of the stats that have been out lately, in the city, 82% of our at-risk residents require digital literacy just to win a middle-income job. So, it's a huge hurdle not to have that access to even apply for a job. Over the last 10 years, The percentage of people who relied on cell phones from 2013 to 2021 doubled, and those people were more often than not at the lower end of the income spectrum. There's another stat that reflects the highest income group over that period for cell phone change, hardly moved, didn't budge at all. So we know who this means the most to. I'm glad we're moving forward with it. I want to thank staff for all of their continued work on this. For the deputants coming in today, thank you very much. And I hope my recommendation can be supported. Thank you.
Councillor Ainsley and Deputy Mayor Malik, thank you for your leadership on this file, very important file on digital equity. Also want to take this opportunity to thank Deputy City Manager Josie Scrolly, because you've been very committed and have done tremendously hard work on ConnectTO. We're going to really miss you because this is your last executive committee meeting. Just on behalf of all the councillors here, everyone that have worked with you, your commitment to this file and all the different files, whether it's women in leadership position, that all the staff grow and learn together. Your amazing work on United Way, I can go on forever. Thank you so much for your contribution to the city. I also know that Deputy Mayor McAuliffe wants to say a few words to you also.
Oh, she already got her case. So. So our mayor pointed out to me that this was going to be your last executive, and I also was just going to share some thanks for everything you do for TO, whether it be ConnectTO, Modern TO, Transform TO. We could probably TO all day long. But you've done amazing work for the public service and for the citizens of Toronto. But in addition to that, is if you didn't have enough on the go with your work, you also were instrumental in TO Now, the Women's Network, and promoting women in the city of Toronto. And for that, we're so grateful. And of course, a true champion for United Way, bringing in record donations year over year. And I know that this is not goodbye, it's see you later, because we'll see you on November 3rd at the gala. So I'm going to take this minute to plug for everybody to buy your tickets, which went on sale today, and I've already bought mine. And I know that we're all looking forward to seeing Josie there in her super bling. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for a very good discussion on this item. With the recommendations in front of us, both Councillor Ainsley and Councillor, we have to do it separately. Okay, all right, I'm trying to batch things. Okay, Councillor Ainsley amendment to second quarter of 2025. All those in favor, approved. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malik, motion. All those in favor, opposed, carry, and the item as amended. All those in favor, approved. Thank you. One last item. Let's finish it before lunch. Okay. We have one speaker. Adam Roy, you are on the internet. We saw you briefly before. 5 minutes. You have deputation on Wheel-Trans. Come on in on video. And this will, yep, here you are. Go for it.
What I wanted to say on this was we, as you know, this is more about transmitting it to the other committee. But the one thing I want you to encourage all councillors to do is understand some of the issues. I know the TTC is acting like there's nothing to see or everything's normal, but with the way the appeals process is going, and we don't even, under a Freedom of Information Act, we don't even get to see how they're deciding which get to use door-to-door service, which are told that they can only ride Wheel-Trans to the stations, which people are told they're not even getting conditional access, and, you know, basically told to use conventional transit. We don't get to see any of these issues. And the problem is they are using the style of what disability is thought of like 30 years ago, and categorizing people, not just because the AODA said they had to, but going above and beyond what the AODA said they had to do, and actually trying to cut people off services. It's effectively a service cut to wheelchairs. And we all know that the system isn't, hopefully with the extra data and internet and extra coverage in the subway, at least in the downtown, things are going to become a little bit safer. But it isn't really a safe, accessible system for having individuals with disability being forced to use the subway system. So I just encourage all of the people to actually encourage the TTC staff to take some of the documents that were censored and make them public, and at least let counselors and counselor staff see some of this questionable material. End of thought.
Thank you. I think Councillor Ainsley may have a question. Yeah.
Good morning again, Adam. So, sorry, just, do you sit on the TTC's advisory committee on accessible transit?
No, I used to sit on it many years ago. I am the chair of the TTC Riders Accessibility Committee. And so I am not privy to some of this information. As TTC Riders, we did an FOI and got some of the information, but a lot of it was heavily redacted. And so that is our major concern, is that the TTC is still hiding from the general public. And even I've asked a few ACAN members. I know they definitely couldn't share it with me, but they said they're not even allowed to look at this questionable table grid that is being used, because I think even the TTC knows that they would have questions if that table was made public.
Okay, and sorry, Adam, it's my understanding from your presentation as well that you said you were people you're associated with, you're submitting FOI requests to the TTC on this, and you're not getting the information through that either?
We did get one report and we paid, but it was a heavily redacted report, and we filed an appeal, and we're still waiting for them to tell us whether we're gonna get more of the report unredacted.
And sorry, Adam, how long ago was that? How long have you been waiting?
So we've been waiting over 4 months.
4 months. Okay, all right. Thank you. Those are my questions, Mayor Chow.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, speaking on the item on the recommendations in front of us, Councillor
Sorry.
Inslee?
I did have a question.
To staff.
Yeah, TTC staff.
Are they here? Yes. Oh, right there. Thank you.
Yep. So I guess my question as well, so we had the presentation from the deputant, and then in the community meetings and people that I speak with in my ward that use Wheel-Trans, for example, I just had a town hall last week, and one of my residents said that the TTC has changed the application process to use Wheel-Trans, and it's much more rigorous now to apply for Wheel-Trans, and people are being turned down that feel that they're qualified or they need Wheel-Trans. Could somebody answer that for me, please?
Through the mayor, Cameron Penham, I'm the head of Wheel-Trans. The application process did change as per regulations outlined in the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So that took place in 2017, whereby we had to categorize customers into 3 specific eligibility categories that were defined by AERA. And so given that, there were a few more questions that needed to be asked, which specifically ask the applicant what the barriers are to using the accessible conventional transit system. And the eligibility determination is based on those questions. And kind of the second part of your question, we've got a less than 0.1% denial rate in terms of eligibility. So, over 99% of applicants do receive eligibility. So it's a very rare case where an applicant would not receive Wheel-Trans service when they apply.
Okay, and those eligibility requirements, when they were changed, I guess A, how was that communicated to the public, and B, was that communicated to members of City Council?
So to the mayor, yes, absolutely. So through our 10-year transformation program, which we do update to the TTC board on a yearly basis, we consulted with ACAT, with the city, and various community partners in terms of how to go through this re-registration process, how to communicate, with our customers, with the public. And so there's a lot of information on our website, a lot of information that we've sent out in our access newsletters that get delivered to our customers via mail. We've held various public forums over the past 7 years. So both our annual accessibility forum, which we're actually going to be doing in a few weeks, as well as other specific public forums focusing around the transformation program and how these changes impacted the application and eligibility and registration. So we have various modes to communicate this, and we continue to do so. And it's one of our top priorities is getting that communication out there in terms of what's changing, how it's changing, and how it's affecting applicants and our customers.
And sorry, just my last question, Mayor Chow. So so through that process that you would put in place, so was it 1% of the people that were using Wheel-Trans were disqualified? Was that the number?
So through the mayor, no. So less than 0.1% of applicants who apply for Wheel-Trans do not get an eligibility decision, therefore aren't eligible based on their application. That applies to re-registrations as well. So through these new regulations, through AOTA, customers who already were customers for Wheel-Trans had to reapply based on this new application and each eligibility conditions. And the same rate would apply for those re-registrants versus new applicants, and a lesser rate in terms of customers who were legacy customers and were signed up for service prior to 2017. Very, very, very rare case where they would no longer have eligibility under the new eligibility criteria.
Okay, and can you put a number on how many people were declared or found to be ineligible across Toronto at that time?
So through the registry, could you repeat your question? Deemed ineligible?
Yes.
I'd have to get back to you on an actual number, but it's a very, very small number.
Okay, so if you could email that to my office, I'd appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you for those excellent questions. Anyone else on trans? No? Councilor Ainsley, you're going to move to recommendations? Yep. Speaking, please? Nope. Okay, anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? I believe we are at the end of the item. And Councilor Fletcher just moved adjournment. Thank you so much. Have a good lunch. Folks, thank you for coming down to City Hall. It's back to you. Thank you very much. You're good.
They want you at that? She didn't talk to me.